Good morning. I'd like to welcome you to this meeting of the Desert Water Agency Board on June 18th, 2024. Sounds like we have people upstairs. So call this meeting to order. Housekeeping for those of us that are in the room, if you could mute your electronic devices so as not to disturb us during the meeting. And for those of us that are attending remotely, if you could mute your microphones unless you're ready to speak during public comment. For the for discussion and questions, I will call on directors in the following roll call order: Director Grasha, Director Bloomer, Secretary Treasurer McKenna, Vice President Bowman, and President Ortega. And all votes will be conducted via roll call. And with that, I will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Right, we can move to the roll call at this point, and Ms. Baca, if you would conduct that, please.
Director Grasha,
Present.
Director Bloomer,
Present.
Secretary Treasurer McKenna,
Present.
Vice President Bowman,
Present.
and President Ortega.
Present. Thank you. Item 4 is public comment on items that are not on today's agenda. This is a time for members of the public to comment on an item that's not listed on our agenda but within our jurisdiction of the agency. Speakers are requested to keep their comments to no more than 3 minutes. And as provided in the Brown Act, the board is prohibited from acting on items that are not listed on today's agenda. Ms. Baca, have we received any public comment prior to the meeting?
No comments have been received.
All right. Do we have any members of the public that would like to participate in the meeting, either virtually or in the room? Seeing none, we'll move to item 5, which is public comments on items listed on today's agenda. Again, we ask that members of the public keep their comments to no more than 3 minutes. And if there are any members attending virtually or in the room, if they would like to either raise their hand or step up to the podium for public comments for items on today's agenda. Seeing none, we'll move to the next item, which is our consent calendar, item 6. These are items that are considered to be routine and will be acted upon by one motion of the board without discussion. If there will be no separate discussions on these items unless a board member requests a specific item to be discussed and are removed from the consent calendar for separate action. So do any members of this board have an item on today's consent calendar that they would like to pull and discuss separately? If not, I'll look for a motion to accept the consent calendar as presented.
I'll make a motion to accept the consent calendar.
Thank you. I'll look for a second.
Second.
All right. We have a first from Director Bloomer, a second from Vice President Bowman. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Director Grasha,
Aye.
Director Bloomer,
Aye.
Secretary Treasurer McKenna,
Aye.
Vice President Bowman,
Aye.
and President Ortega.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. So item 7 is a public hearing on the 2024-2025 groundwater replenishment assessments. So the process for this part of the meeting, which is the public hearing, is that our general manager will present a staff report. I will then open the public hearing. We'll hear any testimony. We'll close the public hearing. There'll be discussion by the board. We'll look for a motion and a second, and then we will have a roll call vote. And apparently we have a representative from Krieger and Stewart who's attending virtually today. So with that, this is the time and place set for the public hearing on the 2024-2025 groundwater replenishment assessments for the West Whitewater River Subbasin and the Mission Creek Subbasin. Mr. Johnson, would you please provide your report?
Yes, thank you, President Ortega and members of the board.
So back at our May 21st board meeting, it was determined funds should be raised by a replenishment assessment and that the board should set for today, a place for a public hearing on the matter. As indicated in the report, both the West Whitewater area of benefit and Mission Creek area of benefit in 2024-2025, the assessment should be $215 per acre foot of production. There was a notice for today's public hearing sent out to pumpers, all pumpers, on May 30th of 2024, and it was published in the public record on May 30th of 2024. There is an exhibit as part of the package which has a comparison of the historic and proposed groundwater replenishment rates for Desert Water Agency and Coachella Valley Water District, and that is Exhibit 8, which is also part of the engineer's report. So the fiscal impact, so based on the estimated production figures, West Whitewater River Subbasin and Mission Creek Subbasin, as indicated in the report, at a $215 acre foot rate will produce just over $8.8 million in revenue for the general fund, and that is an increase of just over $823,000 compared to a $195 per acre foot rate. The rate change will also increase the source of supply expense in the operating fund by $590,000 and produce a net fiscal impact to the agency as a whole of $233,000. And Finance Director Sines has reviewed this report, and Legal Counsel has also reviewed the report. So at this time, staff recommends that the board open the public hearing on the proposed replenishment assessment to be levied in both areas of benefit, to receive public testimony, close public hearing, and then staff recommends adoption of resolutions 1328 through 1331. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. So with that, we'll open the public hearing. Members of the public are invited to provide input. Again, we'd ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes. So if there are members of the public who are attending at this point, if they would like to step forward to the podium or raise their hand if they're attending virtually. Appears to be none, so we can close the public comment and move to, we'll close the public hearing and then we'll move to board discussion and deliberation. All right, so Director Gracia, do you have any
I have
questions or
no
comments?
questions and no comments. Thank
All
you.
right, Director Bloomer.
No questions or no comments.
Secretary Treasurer McKenna.
I do have one. It's for staff, actually, although it's something that I read in the report. On page Roman numeral 2-28, it talks about the 2019 exchange agreement ending Metropolitan Water District's right to call back 100,000 acre feet. And I don't understand what happened there and why did it happen?
So prior to our exchange agreement amendment that occurred in 2019, Metropolitan Water District in our agreement had a provision that they could call back the 100,000 acre feet of water. And during our negotiations and amendment in 2019, that portion of the agreement was removed from, and therefore they do not have the callback. It's Table A water.
So they gave us 100,000 acre feet of water.
More than that.
They, I was just
Go
saying,
ahead,
they
Director.
deliver our table A, and then, but there was a provision that they could call back 100,000 acre feet. If
Correct.
they wanted it
And that's
to,
it.
if they over-delivered us, they could call back 100,000 acre feet.
But they gave up the right to call it back. Does that mean they never provided it in the first place, or?
No, no. So there was provisions that if situations occurred that allowed or required them to have to call that water back for that year, they would do that. They had the ability to do that and not deliver that water to us for that particular season based on situations of delivery. And therefore, during our negotiations, we felt that we wanted to have a more secure, reliable water delivery to us and not have that hanging over us, not knowing whether they were going to potentially call that 100,000 acre feet water back or not. So during the negotiations, we were able to have that removed from from the agreement. So our total allotment of Table A water is 194,100 acre feet of water. That includes that 100,000 acre feet. If prior to the 2019 change, there could have been where Met for a particular year could have said, oh, I know your total allotment is 194,100. However, conditions require us to call that water back, 100,000 of that water back, and therefore they did not have to deliver that water to us. So we've made the agreement to have that 100,000 acre feet as reliable water that does not cannot be called back from Met.
Right.
Yeah, it's a leased water that is more reliable for us. So they're, instead of having these stipulations that says, yeah, hey, we're going to call this back this year. The lease now says, well, we're leasing you the water, but we've removed those conditions on the callback, and therefore it will not be called back.
All right. I think I get it now. Thanks.
Okay.
All right, it looks like General Counsel has raised his hand, so I'd like to let him speak at this point.
Yes, thanks, Mr. President, and maybe Steve Johnson can correct me if I'm wrong because I'm going on memory here, but I believe that years ago, as part of these negotiations, Metropolitan Water District agreed to transfer 100,000 acre feet of their own Table A amount to Desert Water Agency and to Coachella Valley Water District, with the proviso that if they needed to take that water back under certain conditions, they could do so. And in the most recent round of negotiations, they determined that they would not need to do that. And so they would just, live with the 100,000 acre feet of Table A transfer that had occurred previously without a callback provision. So I think it's right that Desert Water Agency and Coachella Valley Water District received an additional 100,000 acre feet of Metropolitan Water District's Table A amount without a callback provision. And Steve, I hope you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but that's my recollection.
Yeah, you're correct, Mike.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Did you have any further question or comment?
I'm just seeking what was their motivation for giving up the rights to that water that they had advance delivered.
They, I think at the time, as you know, there are fixed charges that go along with that 100,000 acre feet of water that have to be paid even if you don't take any deliveries. And I think part of their thinking was that they would like to unload a portion of that obligation to a couple of other contractors that would like to have it, those being Coachella Valley Water District and Desert Water Agency. And also, I think it came up in the discussions at the time that that Desert Water Agency and Coachella Valley Water District were providing considerable benefit to Metropolitan Water District in this storage arrangement because it gives them a lot of flexibility, which is of great value to them. So I think it's an indication of their, their recognition that they do derive significant benefit from this arrangement, which basically allows them to store that quantity of water in the basin and then take it back by way of exchange when they need it. So it's an arrangement that benefits both parties, but I think in part this was Metropolitan Water District's recognition that they too were receiving significant benefit from this exchange arrangement.
Right, I think I understand now. Thank you.
All right. Vice President Bowman?
None from me.
Okay, and just as a follow-up, so this 100,000 is actually, if you will, shared between our agency and Coachella Valley Water District?
That's correct. It was proportioned out
Okay.
between both agencies.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
I have a question. We can pass this, these four resolutions in one motion?
Council?
If I include the resolution numbers?
The answer is yes, but if there's a no vote, then we'll need to sever them to determine, which director is voting no on which resolution.
Okay, so we can try it the first way, and if
What
that's what the motion is. So let's move along then. I'll look for a
So,
motion.
Mr. President, I move we approve staff recommendation resolution 1328, 1329, 1330, and 1331.
All right, I have a motion. I'll look for a second.
I'll second.
All right, thank you. So I have a first from Director Gracia, a second from Director Bloomer. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Director Gracia,
Aye.
Director Bloomer,
Aye.
Secretary Treasurer McKenna,
Aye.
Vice President Bowman,
Aye.
and President Ortega.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. All right, we'll go to the next set of items. That would be item number 8 on our agenda, a series of action items. So we will start with item 8A, which is the request adoption of resolutions number 1332, 1333, and 1334, establishing rates and fees for domestic water service, recycled water service, and sewer service. And we'll begin with Finance Director Sines.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the board. As you recall, last year, the agency completed a comprehensive rate study with rate consultant NBS. And we also conducted a public protest hearing pursuant to Proposition 218. And then the board adopted a 5-year rate schedule to be implemented annually thereafter by board action each year. So as during the budget each year, it is planned that we will be evaluating the need for the proposed rate increase and then making recommendations, which we're doing here today. Staff requests the Board of Directors act on these 3 resolutions to update the domestic water, recycled water, and sewer rates for the second of 5 increases included in that board-approved rate study. The recycled water rates and sewer pass-through rates for CVWD are proposed to be effective on July 1st, 2024. And the domestic water rates and the agency component of the sewer charge are proposed to be effective on January 1st, 2025. Now I'd like to go into the domestic water service resolution and provide you the highlights of the changes that are within it. The resolution updates the 3 quantitative rates, which are the standard potable water rate, the Chino Creek potable water rate, and the temporary construction meter water rate. For the potable water rate, this is the quantitative water rate component of the monthly service charge per 100 cubic feet for all metered and unmetered water used for all purposes other than the temporary services and the Chino Creek potable water system. That potable water rate is increasing from $2.44 to $2.59 effective January 1st, 2025. Moving on to the Chino Creek potable water rate, this is for a very small component of our system that's separate from the rest of the system. And Palm Springs Aerial Tramway is the only customer in this system, and because of its nature, requires its individual rate. Currently, that rate is $6.40, and the proposed rate to be effective on January 1, 2025 would be $7.36. The temporary construction meter water rate is proposed to increase from $2.48 to $2.64, and this is for water that's delivered through the temporary construction water meters. Moving on to our fixed rates, our monthly service charge. This resolution, it updates the water service charge component of that monthly service charge for domestic water customers. And it is designed to maintain a 30% fix versus 70% from the quantitative rate. And combined, the quantitative and fixed charges, they are increasing a combined total of 6.25%. And there is a listing of all of the monthly service charges there. Also included in the resolution are updates to our drought rate and revenue stabilization rate. These rates are not currently in effect, but they could be placed into effect upon action of the board according to the agency's drought rate policy and the agency's revenue stabilization rate policy. And so because the rest of the rates are being adjusted, these need to adjust as well so that they are ready if an event takes place such as extreme water shortage because of drought or the need to conserve because of that water shortage. The drought rate could be put into place by the board, and that would only be in place for 6 months unless increased or renewed by or rescinded by an action of the board. And if the drought rate was put into place, staff would be monitoring the consumption levels and associated revenues to determine when it is recommended for the rate to be implemented and also rescinded by the board. The revenue stabilization rate is again similar to the drought rate, where it goes on top of the normal quantitative rate if there presents a need where there is an extreme revenue shortage because of decreased consumption for reasons other than drought or extreme water shortage. So as we found out with COVID, there's things that can happen that really are not associated with a drought or water shortage that can really impact the agency's ability to continue business because of that revenue shortage. So this rate is intended to be added if necessary by action of the board for reasons other than drought. And the agency's drought rate remains has priority over the revenue stabilization rate, and both will not be put in place at the same time according to the agency's policies that the board has adopted. So there's a listing there that has the current drought rate, revenue stabilization rate, and the proposed effective revenue stabilization rate as of January 1, 2025. Moving on to the zone charge. The resolution adjusts the zone charges per 100 cubic feet of delivered water necessary to cover the costs associated with pumping to the higher elevations. So we have several zones, but they really fall into four different categories. The base, where there is a no zone charge, and then there's these different categories where several of them are lumped together by their zones and the costs associated with them. So in that, there's a table that is provided that provides the increase to be effective on January 1, 2025. The monthly fire service charge, it has been adjusted for the rate increase as well, effective January 1, 2025, and a listing is provided of those increases for each meter size. The agency also has a backflow protection device repair charge that it assesses to those with a backflow device, and the resolution updates that backflow protection device repair charge depending on the size of that backflow device. And that concludes the changes to the resolution for the potable water rates. Are there any questions before I move on to the recycled water resolution?
Are there any questions, starting with Director Gracia? No questions. Okay, Bloomer.
None for me.
Secretary Treasurer McKenna, any questions? No?
thanks.
And Vice President Bowman?
None from me.
Just, what would, so for the first resolution, what would, as it proposed, what would be the overall increase to our rates for, you mentioned 6.6, I think, for the
It's
delivery.
6.25% that's a combination between the monthly service charge
Right.
and the quantitative rate. I do not have them separate because they are different depending on how much you consume. So really, the rate increase was developed as an overall increase. So it is 6.25% increase for the monthly service charge and the quantitative rate service charge. And then in the staff report, I do have the total fiscal impact for the separate charges, where for the monthly fire service rates will increase, it will create an additional $59,900 per year in fire protection revenues. The quantitative zone and monthly service charge rates increase will result in additional $2.489 million per year and that is a total year of 12 months. But because our rates are proposed to go into effect mid-year on January 1 in the proposed budget that's going to be coming to you next, that is going to have an increase of just over $1 million for the 24-25 fiscal year with that January 1 effective date. And so those are the fiscal impacts for the operating fund for the domestic water resolution changes.
Okay, thank you.
I move for,
I think we're going to, she's going to go through the other two.
oh, I
Yeah,
thought
I
we were
have two
doing
more.
A.
No
We're
problem.
going to do them all?
Sure, well, we can do as we did the public hearing.
Okay, so moving on to Resolution 1333, which establishes rates, fees, and charges for recycled water. Back in 2022, the agency reduced their recycled rate from 79 cents per 100 cubic feet to 60 cents per 100 cubic feet. And we implemented a multi-year strategy to increase that rate by 5 cents per year through 2028. And the reason for this was to make the cost of recycled water comparable to pumping groundwater from private wells, including the replenishment assessment charge levied by Desert Water Agency. And in our last rate study, 2023 rate study, NBS, they included this rate strategy into the proposed rates. And once we get to after 2028, we will be at a place where we'll be able to perform another rate study to determine what the rates should actually be at and not that are unsubsidized. So we will be able to, and then we'll create a new rate plan for our recycled water system. And during the 2023 rate study, that 5-year rate increase plan was put in place to continue to generate 0.5% of recycled water revenue from fixed charges and the remaining 99.5% from monthly quantitative rate. And that is due to the high volume producers and also the low quantity of accounts. We only have 10 recycled water accounts. And so the proposed rate is 70 cents effective July 1, 2024, and that is up from 65 cents, along with adjustments to the recycled water monthly service charge that is provided. Are there any questions regarding the recycled water rate resolution before I move on to sewer?
Any questions? No? Okay, thank you.
Okay, moving on to the sewer rate resolution. This is Resolution 1334. And in addition to the agency's charges for sewer services, the agency passes through the treatment charges that are imposed by the Coachella Valley Water District and City of Palm Springs for sewage treatment. CVWD imposes a charge for sewer customers located in Cathedral City. The City of Palm Springs imposes a charge for sewer customers located in the Palm Oasis and Dream Home communities of Cathedral City. And these are charges that are collected by the agency on the customer's monthly water bills, and they are remitted in full to CVWD and the City of Palm Springs. For the first proposed change within the sewer resolution is CVWD's monthly sewer service charge. Last Tuesday, on June 11th, CVWD adopted a rate increase that is effective on July 1, 2024. And with the adoption of this rate increase, DWA must also adopt the same increase to our rate for that amount of that pass-through charge for DWA customers whose sewage is collected by DWA and then delivered to CVWD for treatment. So CVWD, at their board meeting, they adopted a rate increase from $27.10 per equivalent dwelling unit to $29.48. So that's an 8.8% increase that they imposed. And so for July 1, 2024, that makes the rate that we will is proposed for us to collect from our customers $36.79 for those that are within the CVWD collection treatment area within DWA's system. That includes $7.31, which is DWA's current sewer service rate, and CVWD's $29.48 for that total of $36.79. Now, effective on January 1, 2025, the agency is proposing to update the monthly sewer service charge that DWA collects per equivalent dwelling unit, in addition to the amounts that are collected on behalf of CVWD and the City of Palm Springs. That proposed rate increase is from the current $7.31 per EDU to $7.66, which is a 4.8% increase. And that makes the total rate for the customers within CVWD's treatment area, the Cathedral City sewer service charge per EDU will be $37.14, including $29.48 for DWA and $7.66 for, $29.48 for CVWD and $7.66 for DWA. In the Palm Oasis and Dream Home sewer service charge per EDU will be $27.66. That includes that increase to $7.66 for DWA and the City of Palm Springs for $20 per EDU. The City of Palm Springs does not have a planned rate increase for this upcoming fiscal year. Legal counsel has reviewed the staff report and accompanying resolutions, and for the operating fund, the fiscal impact, I've already reviewed what the quantitative and fixed charges would be, but the recycled water rate also impacts our operating fund. And the recycled water rate increase will result in an additional $74,000 per year in revenues, and it has been included in the operating fund budget for 2024-2025 that will be proposed to you shortly. In the wastewater fund, the sewer rate increase effective July 1, 2024, that's attributed to CVWD's rate increase will have no net fiscal impact on the agency, as it is a pass-through charge that is collected on behalf of and remitted directly to Coachella Valley Water District. The sewer rate increase effective January 1, 2025 will result in an additional $6,500 per year in DWA sewer revenues, of which $3,200 is included in the proposed wastewater fund budget for 24-25 to reflect the January 1 effective date, January 1, 2025. And with that, it concludes my report, and staff recommendation is that the Board of Directors adopt resolutions 1332 through 1334. And I'd be happy to answer any additional questions you may have.
Thank you. Director Grasha, do you have any additional questions?
No questions, thanks.
Director Bloomer?
None.
Secretary Treasurer McKenna?
I have none, thanks.
Okay. Vice President Bowman?
None.
Okay, neither do I. So I'll look for a resolution to accept I'll look for a motion to accept the resolutions 1332, 1333, and 1334 as proposed.
I'll make a motion to accept resolution number 1332, 1333, and 1334.
Thank you. I have a first and looking for a second.
Second.
Thank you. So I have a first from Director Bloomer and a second from Director Grasha. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Director Grasha,
Aye.
Director Bloomer,
Aye.
Secretary Treasurer McKenna,
Aye.
Vice President Bowman,
Aye.
and President Ortega.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. We can move to item 8B, request adoption of fiscal year 2024-2025 operating, general, and wastewater budgets. And again, this is a report from Finance Director Sines.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. Attached for your review is the final draft of the proposed operating, general, and wastewater fund budgets for fiscal year 2024-2025. At the last board meeting on June 4th, 2024, we presented to you the draft budget and accompanying highlights document. Since that presentation, there has been no changes to the proposed budget. And the fiscal impact, the budget provides the anticipated revenues and expenditures for the operating, general, and wastewater funds for the upcoming 2024-2025 fiscal year. And staff's recommendation is the Board of Directors adopt the operating, general, and wastewater fund budgets for fiscal year 2024-2025. And I'd be happy to answer any more questions that you may have with regards to the budget.
Thank you. Director Grasha, do you have any additional questions?
I have no questions.
Okay.
No comments. Thank you.
Director Bloomer?
No questions.
Okay. Secretary Treasurer McKenna?
I have none, thanks.
All right. Vice President Bowman?
None from me.
None from me. So I'll look for a motion to accept the fiscal year 2024-2025 operating, general, and wastewater budgets as proposed.
I'll make a motion to adopt fiscal year 2024-2025 operating, general, and wastewater budgets.
Thank you.
Second.
All right. So we have a first from Director Bloomer and a second from Director Grasha. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Director Grasha,
Aye.
Director Bloomer,
Aye.
Secretary Treasurer McKenna,
Aye.
Vice President Bowman,
Aye.
and President Ortega.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Item 8C, request board authorization for general manager to execute land lease agreement with Palm Springs Surf Club, LLC. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, President Ortega. So the Palm Springs Surf Club LLC is seeking a land lease agreement for approximately 2,500 square foot portion of our recycled water property. It's a 10-foot wide by 250-foot long section of the property. It's for a fire lane access to their property. The agreement does allow for improvements within that lease space area, such as a wall, which they have started to construct. However, if the lease is terminated or expired, the leasee within 30 days shall remove all improvements and restore the space to its original condition. The lease is for 10 years with an automatic extension of 2 additional 5-year terms. The first payment to be received to the agency is $3,100. And then rent shall increase annually by an amount equal to the greater of 4% or the CPI increase based on the prior 12-month period. So we'll review the past 12 months, look at the CPI. If it's greater than 4%, then we'll add that percentage to the fee. The fiscal impact is a positive $3,100 and at least $37,200 for the first 10 years. Director Sines has reviewed this report. Legal counsel has reviewed the report and staff requests board authorization for a general manager to execute the lease agreement with the Palm Springs Surf Club LLC.
Thank you. Director Grasha, do you have any questions?
I have one question probably for legal counsel. This lease is transferable, I assume, right? So should the operator sell his interest, it would, be transferable in some way to the new owner? The lease kind of travels with the property, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
I believe so. Steve, is that your understanding as well?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Director Bloomer?
No questions.
Secretary Treasurer McKenna?
Well, I do have one. If this entity doesn't perform under the lease, if perhaps, they go out of business, do we have any funds available to remove those improvements?
Well, that was kind of why I was wondering if it was transferable, because those improvements.
General Manager?
Right. Let's see.
So the question is, if they fail to pay their agreement and the lease is terminated, do we have funds set aside to restore the property to its original condition?
I put it better that, do we have a recourse to some funds to do that? If we end up with a liability for removing these improvements, do we have any way of getting the money back?
Well, I would assume that we could go to court to get the money from the entity who owns the property at that time, whether it's the Palm Springs Surf Club or if they sell it to.
Well, I know it's a bit late in the day to ask this, but I think they should put up some kind of bond so that we're not on the hook for thousands of dollars of costs removing these improvements and reinstating the property with nobody to look to for the funds. They could just simply disappear, go out of business, leave no assets.
We would, Mr. Riddell, I would assume we could put something in the agreement, a bond type.
I think that kind of.
Can we let General Counsel respond, please? Thank you.
Yes, a provision like that can be added to the lease agreement. Of course, we need to make sure it's acceptable to them. And I assume that would defer board action on the lease agreement until that revision is made.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I would defer the action until, I could see something. We could be on the hook for a couple of $100,000 here.
Okay, Vice President Bowman.
Well, my question would be, if these are improvements, are they really improvements? And if they are, why would we want to take them out?
Well,
Okay, perhaps General Manager Johnson can explain what those improvements are and whether they would be of any benefit to us after the lease is terminated.
What they have currently built is a concrete wall that will have, they have not installed this portion yet, but on top of the wall will be wrought iron railing. That will be the security barrier between our property and the surf club property. We could tear that down and then put a chain link fence back up, which was there prior, or we could keep that as our wall, as our security. I would recommend that we would keep the wall, and there is an electrical service line that is on our side of the wall, not the fire lane side, so we still have access to that electrical service line. And I would keep the wall. It would be a good security barrier to that. That is the only improvement that they've also installed an asphalt driveway to over that 5-foot section. Our fence was on property line. Off of our fence is 5 feet off, or 5 feet off of our fence is the new wall. And in that stretch, they've paved a section of the property. And then around 7 feet off of our property line is the electrical service line, which is around 4 foot off of the wall that they've built.
So the asphalt, where's the property line in relation to the fire lane?
The fire lane extends 5 feet into our property.
So we could, in fact, later on put a chain link fence down the middle of the fire lane.
We could,
Good, okay.
yes.
All right.
Okay. Anything else?
I move staff's recommendation
Okay.
as it is.
I have a first from Director Gracia. I'll look for a second.
I'll second.
All right. First from Director Gracia, second from Director Bloomer. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Director Gracia,
Aye.
Director Bloomer,
Aye.
Secretary Treasurer McKenna,
Aye.
Vice President Bowman,
Aye.
and President Ortega.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Item 9 is the General Manager's Report. Mr. Johnson, please.
Okay, thank you, President Ortega. So on May 31st, the Superior Court of Yolo County released an order that denies all claims on the Friends of the River versus the Sites Project Authority cases. This was a case that was brought against the Sites Reservoir Project. There were 6 organizations that put a suit or filed claim against the Sites Project for their CEQA documents. And the court found in favor for the authority, the Sites Authority, on every claim asserted by the groups. On June 14th, the groups did file an appeal to this ruling. And if you recall that the Sites Project was streamlined by the governor's infrastructure streamlining law that requires that the courts decide CEQA challenges within 270 days to the extent of feasibility. And the decision that was made by the court occurred within 148 days. So it's falling within that process. And hopefully the appeal is in favor of sites. So we'll see. The next item is a monitoring well that has been drilled on agency property. We own a well site near the Dream Homes community in Cathedral City over by Asina Country Club. And the agency, along with other agencies within the Coachella Valley, we submitted a request with the Department of Water Resources in their Technical Support Services program to construct this monitoring well. And this well will fill data gaps that was identified in our salt nutrient plan, a groundwater managing program work plan. DWR did approve the request for 3 wells in DWA's service area. There's 2 in the Indio subbasin and 1 that will be drilled in the Mission Creek subbasin. This is the first of the 3 that have been drilled. And ABC Loven Drillers began the work on May 20th. As of Friday, June 14th, work has been completed on that well, and a sample has been pulled from the well. And this will be a beneficial well for us to ensure that we're meeting all of the data requirements for that salt nutrient management plan. The 2 other sites, the second site will be at the end of Sunrise Way. We own a 7-acre lot at the end of Sunrise Way, and we're going to be drilling the second well, monitoring well there. The third well, which will be in the Mission Creek subbasin, we are still working on trying to secure property for that. Okay. And there's some photos and so forth of the driller. Went very smoothly. The next report is our system leak data. 27 leaks since May 22nd through June 10th. And I just wanted to highlight Avenida Caballeros only had one leak over that period. And to let the board know an update on Avenida Caballeros, all the pipe is in the ground, has been tested, and all the back tees have come back negative. We are currently in the process of tying over the north stretch of the pipe, which is from, what's the street, Dave? Sacramento to Tahquitz Canyon. That stretch is the north section. We are tying that main over. The southern portion, which is from Sacramento to Ramon, is in service. It's been tied over and in service. So very excited. Our crews are ecstatic. And with that, I'll go to the meetings and activities. So I've been gone last week, but there were still meetings continued, tribal mediation meetings. Assistant GM and Finance Director, Mr. Tate and Ms. Sines attended those meetings while I was out. We had our executive committee meeting for this board meeting on the 6th. There was a legislative update meeting that Ms. Lort attended on the 13th. And DWA, CVWD, MWD coordination call that Mr. Tate attended on the 14th. And I have a couple other items that weren't listed on the report, but I just wanted to give you an update. There was, so yesterday a fire broke out in the Palisades area or Tuscany area of Palm Springs. We did mobilize and went to our sites. The fire department was utilizing our Palisades Reservoir site as kind of a staging area. The fire did come down the mountainside to that reservoir site. It did not, we have a large buffer of cleared land, so it didn't threaten our facilities. However, the fire department was able to utilize that spot as a nice staging area, and at this time, none of our structures have been damaged. I don't have an update. Mr. Tate, do you have an update on if the fire is out completely? Yeah, so, but that's an update on that fire. And one other item I just wanted to mention that yesterday the State Water Board released a new revised draft regulations for making conservation a California way of life. We will be reviewing and we'll provide an update at a future meeting. So,
Thank you.
yep.
Any questions for our general manager, Director Gracia?
No questions, no comments, thank you.
Thank you. Director Bloomer?
None for me, thanks.
And Secretary Treasurer McKenna?
I have none, thanks.
All right. Vice President Bowman? No? Okay. Thank you. And we'll move to the next item, which is 10, Director's Reports on Meetings and Events Attended on behalf of the agency. If each board member could state where and what event they attended and provide us a little summary, that would be fantastic. And we'll start with Director Gracia.
Thank you, Mr. President. On Thursday, the 6th, I attended a legislative update meeting sponsored by the Desert Valley Builders Association. It was held at the city of Rancho Mirage in their conference room. Ms. Lort presented on behalf of our agency and must say did a really good job. Good to see. I also participated in IT security training for the agency on the 10th, the Coachella Valley Water District Board meeting on the 11th, and yesterday a webinar sponsored by Aqua titled Turning Electricity Reliability Challenges into Opportunity to Save on Energy. Generally, this was about agencies looking at turning towards, more aggressively towards solar to begin to participate in the development of their own electricity and trying to kind of neutralize the increased costs of buying electricity, I guess. We're one of the largest purchasers of electricity in the area. And I found it very interesting. It seems like maybe there's some movement that, what to me has always been a kind of a holdup on that is the storage, batteries. And it sounds like they may be approaching a solution that, in my view, makes it more viable than it has been in the past. And then during that meeting, I got a notification about the fire. And after the meeting was over, I made a beeline out there for spent a couple hours out at the staging area and observed all of the activity and watched the helicopters arrive and start drawing from our ponds out there to put the fire out. It was an interesting experience. I felt I could almost see my, you know, I've worked on many fires, working for both the Sheriff's Department up in Big Bear and the American Red Cross. And as I get older, I see myself standing further back instead of in the early years of my life. I would have been right out there with and it was interesting to kind of realize that, you know, those guys are out there fighting those fires and doing such a great job, and having watched the generations of firemen come along and pass off their experiences. So it was an interesting afternoon, and they did a great job holding it back. And that's it.
Right, thank you. Director Bloomer.
I attended the executive committee meeting on June 6th. Then I attended AWWA on June 10th, 11th, 12th, and 13th. There were plenty of sessions to choose from to go to. The two that I thought to highlight there was one on Chrome 6, where one of the presenters actually highlighted the Coachella Valley as having some of the highest concentrations of Chrome 6. And after that session, I happened to be sitting next to some engineers from Black and Veatch, and so I talked to them about some of the plans and studies that they're working on for Chrome 6. And there was some talk about some agencies back when the regulation first came out actually continued with their projects, so we're able to build them at a much cheaper rate. And so the thought is that everyone should have done that, but you know, hindsight's 20/20. So we'll see they were trying to analyze what the total cost of the remediation would be and how much the state should help with that. So it was pretty interesting, barring any lawsuits on the regulation. And then I went to one where Metropolitan did an update on the regional recycled water plant. and highlighted some different pure water projects. And so that is moving along, also a very expensive project. And then spent a lot of time walking around the exhibit hall where you could find anything that you needed there. People trying to sell you pipes and meters, and I told them that was above my pay grade in choosing those things, so they didn't harass me too much. But all in all, it was a great conference, huge conference. I think they had 10,000 attendees. Yeah, from worldwide, they said. So, and then I'm here today, so that's it.
Thank you. Secretary Treasurer McKenna.
Since the last meeting, I also attended the American Water Works Association annual conference and exhibits. I was particularly struck by the keynote speaker, Pat Mulroy, formerly of Southern Nevada Water Authority, who addressed the question of climate change. And she described, she says, and I think she's right, that the weather we are now experiencing is what we expected 30 years from now. It all came on us much faster, and that we are paralyzed in our efforts to deal with it. We are so slow to build infrastructure that she said this climate change effects will roll right over us before we even get started. And it struck me as considerably ironic that our efforts to deal with the changes to our environment are hampered by our Environment Quality Act. You know, we have so many procedures to go through to establish we're not affecting the environment, that we can't deal with the effect the environment has on us. And I think there's really a strong lesson there. I also attended the Chromeo 6 breakout session. I attended Colorado River breakout section, and several others. Some of them were extremely interesting, and some of them were extremely boring. And I've yet to develop the skill of how to pick which one to go to. The exhibit hall, I thought was incredible. I did not know so many people made pipes and valves. On the margins, I met and chatted with the Fondion Sorabi, who's the Chief Executive, Director General, I should say, the Water Authority of Burkina Faso. And it struck me as quite amazing that somebody will come all the way from Ouagadougou to Anaheim to look at what we're doing about climate change. He was particularly concerned about climate change. In his country, it could push 2 or 3 million people who are subsistence farmers off their land. And they will go somewhere. I'm not saying they'll show up on our borders, but they'll show up on somebody's borders. So climate change is, in fact, I'd rather stop talking about climate. I'm going to call it climate breakdown. You know, it's beyond change. It's an incoming disaster. So that's my thought for the day. Not very optimistic, I know, but that's what I got from it. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Vice President Bowman.
Yes, I too attended the AWWA for the first time ever, and it was massive, as everybody said it was. The amount of workshops you could go to was immense. Their catalog of things, along with their app, was very helpful. I just want to throw out a few things that I picked up. This one's for Director Sines. 75% of knowledge workers in the workforce are using AI right now. And I know that our staff is enjoying that usage. I went to a communicating about PFAS and the emerging contaminants. And I don't know that we have spoken much about it as a district, but one of the points they made is that we need to communicate that PFAS is everywhere. And by acknowledging that we are dealing with this, we help the consumer, our constituents, build trust that we are on it and we're not ignoring it. And it gives an opportunity for a community to be invested in the whole thing. I didn't know anything about PFAS until 9 or 10 months ago, when I think our general counsel brought it up in a closed session. It's like, okay. Another workshop I went to that I thought was fascinating is alternative raw water supplies. And there was a person, Aaron Cox from the Arizona Department, and she was talking about that Arizona is looking at taking water from the Sea of Cortez, desalinizing it there, and bringing it on a pipeline 500 miles to the Phoenix, I'm sorry, to the Phoenix and Tucson areas. And they're just talking about it now. And kind of what Director McKenna was saying, that I feel like we're behind on so many things. Even current day here in our Coachella Valley, when we have wind, thanks to Tropical Storm Hillary, we who are north of the freeway can't get here directly. And I read in the paper today that they probably won't start constructing any bridges until 27. And that's bad. I mean, anyway, back to my thing. The other thing or another aspect of raw water supplies was atmospheric harvesting, where they're doing in essence, a dehumidification of the air, even in arid places like Arizona, and trying to pull out as much water as they can. I just found it fascinating because I enjoy tech. And lastly, I think I have one more little highlight. No, that was it. It was an interesting conference. I have to look carefully if I want to go next year or not, because a lot of it is for staff, and maybe it's something that we had one staff person, Maya
Lopez.
Yeah, and we had an enjoyable dinner, getting to know her, quality person. For some reason, I thought she was new, but she's been here 9 years, so oh well. And then secondly, I attended yesterday the first of hopefully quarterly meetings. President Ortega, myself, along with MSWD Board President Ivan Sewell and Vice President Robert Griffith, an ad hoc DWA MSWD gathering where we just talk among ourselves about what are the issues our districts are facing. And we had a very good first meeting. I think we affirmed that we see what they're doing with the challenge of Chrome 6, and I believe that they're on it, and we had discussions about that. And they brought up that they would like to know more, and I concur, I think we concur, replenishment at the Worsley Ponds. How frequently we get it, and it seems to me that we're at the mercy of Met, that all of a sudden they tell us when we're going to get the water, and I think then our counterparts at MSWD feel that they're at the mercy of us. And it would be nice to have a discussion, and maybe there is at a staff level, I don't know. But when we get the water, how much we get it, because in their case, they get we got a whole lot of water over there, and then it brought the level up, and then with nothing and nothing and nothing and nothing. And then on the reports, it kind of has a negative connotation that it's below the amount. So I don't know how we could smooth that out, if it's even possible. So it might be something that we might consider a joint board meeting with them or something like that. I would like to know more, and how much are we at the mercy of Met telling us, here's what you get, like it or not, take it, or and you're stuck with it. I don't know. I don't understand that. So anyway, that was my
Okay, thank you. And I, too, attended the conference in Anaheim last week. This was my second opportunity. Last year, Secretary Treasurer McKenna and I attended the conference for the first time in Toronto, and I had sort of forgotten how much the incredible volume of content, and I guess it stands to reason because this is a very large conference, but it's a bit overwhelming, and to sort of figure out, as I think you alluded to, Secretary Treasurer McKenna, you're not sure how to pick the winners. Sometimes you find them and sometimes you don't. But some of the more some of these presentations have already been mentioned, but one I thought I would call out was something that was referred to as holistic flood management. And while it was really seemed to be geared more towards very urban environments, thought there might be some, given what we experienced last summer with the tropical storm Hillary, perhaps there might be some lessons to be learned there. It was a very interesting conversation about how the city of New York has taken inspiration from projects that were happening in Copenhagen and worked with members of the team in Copenhagen who came to Manhattan and to the Bronx and Queens and showed them ways that they could store water, capture water on site. Some of it was very innovative, like taking parks and lowering basketball courts to a level lower than what the street level so that the water would sit there and then percolate down, as opposed to flooding buildings, which has been a problem in New York for quite some time now. Subway systems and the basements of buildings getting flooded and electrical systems being torn apart by that process. So I found that very interesting, and it sort of played into my sort of international relations hat for a moment, and lots of pretty graphics that they produced. I did attend another seminar called "Saving the Oasis: Strategies for a Resilient Colorado River," and I have to say I was disappointed. It turned into, I think you were there as well, right? In fact, I think you might have left early. Because
may I cut in here?
Sure.
75% into the presentation, they didn't give us any they just gave us the same old stuff.
Yeah, it felt like the same old thing, and it felt like upper basin, lower basin, that conversation that we've heard many times already, and they were pretty low on strategies, no solutions or strategies. So that was probably not one in the winner circle. And I think you made the reference to the PFAS conversation. I looked at that more as, even though, at this point in time, from this agency's point of view, the PFAS seems to be less of a concern, but I also looked at it as a way to broader than that, and looking at other contaminants that might be coming down the road that might come down in terms of regulation that we might have to face in the future, and ways to communicate to the public. I think you referenced that as well, building that trust in the public's mind now, to show them with sort of regular frequency that we are addressing the situation, and this is our time frame, this is how we're doing it, this is what we're testing for, and so on. Because there seems to be, at least from the presenter's point of view, a lot of misinformation about what is and is not happening in general, not just here in the Coachella Valley. And I think that might be it for me. So, and then also, as Vice President Bowman mentioned already, we did have the joint first of hopefully quarterly meetings with the executive committee of the Mission Springs Water District. And I got to experience something that you just referenced a moment ago about what it takes to get to Desert Hot Springs when the roads aren't open.
Thank you.
I got to experience it slightly in reverse, so perhaps it wasn't as bad because I wasn't dealing with lots of traffic, but it still was slightly inconvenient and gave me a better appreciation of what that's like on a windy Monday morning going to downtown Desert Hot Springs. So with that, I think we can move to, of course, what have I done with my script? Here it is. We can move to item 11, which is comments and requests. Director Gracia.
A mixture from a combination of meetings that I've attended over the last couple of weeks. I've been able to piece together what seems like the strategy that's going forward, that people are having issues with chromium-6 and obvious budgetary challenges that brings, that it appears they're going for a legislative fix. They're going to apparently try to get the legislature to overturn the state Water Resource Control Board. It'll be interesting to see if they make that a full court press. I think it's a fool's errand, but from the appearance of budgets that have been presented over the past few weeks, it sounds like they have no plans at all to try to meet the requirements that the state has brought down on them. I think it's irresponsible. And that's it.
Okay. Director Bloomer,
No comments or requests?
thank you. Secretary Treasurer McKenna.
Well, I do have one request. I want the board to consider moving the start time of the meeting to 9 a.m. because it is particularly challenging to get down here with road closures and still be here at 8 a.m. So just a thought. We can look at that. Thanks.
Perhaps we could add that to an executive committee agenda for the future? Okay.
And maybe not, you want 9 a.m., I want 1 p.m., so maybe you could leave the time
maybe we
open
can
on
just
the-
have a general
Yeah,
conversation
general
about that.
conversation. Thank you.
Vice President Bowman.
I too would like to have the discussion on what the impact to the district would be for a 9 o'clock meeting.
Mhm.
Occasionally, we've had 9 o'clock meetings here, and it's like, wow, what a different of a drive from our
Mhm.
area, because, DHS is serving the valley with people that are laborers and whatnot, and I heard the figure of like 10,000 people leave DHS every morning. So when the arteries are clogged, and which they have been or shut,
Mhm.
anyway, I also am appreciative of the staff's time and fellow directors that have other things to do.
Mhm.
So it may be that we need to have the discussion.
Yeah.
That would be great.
It's fine. And just to follow on that, we did have this discussion about a year and a half ago when this board was convened for the first time, of its current 5 members. And I do believe that although we decided, as the majority decided, to keep the meetings at 8 o'clock on the first and third Tuesday, we also agreed that we would revisit this. So that was, again, we can put that on a future executive committee agenda, and then we can talk about it as a group here in the boardroom. All right, I don't have anything else at this point, so it's about 17 minutes past 9. I would ask if the board could meet in closed session at 9:25 in the boardroom. And with that, I thank the public for being here today, for staff for being here today, and we will be back in a little while to close the public meeting for the day. Thank you. All right, so here we are back in open session. I can report that we have no actionable items that were taken in closed session, and with that, we can adjourn this meeting. Thank you.